What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with Tech Daily. So last year, with the release of the iPhone XR and XS, I made a video, which ended up being super popular, that showed the surprising differences in pictures between the two phones. All the main camera lens hardware was the same across the devices. The cheaper XR packed just the one single camera lens around back, while the XS had an additional telephoto lens for a dual camera setup. And ultimately, that meant that not only were there certain limitations with the XR, you couldn't take portrait pics of objects or animals, for example, but in certain shooting modes, particularly with portrait pictures, the results between the phones were vastly different. So different, in fact, that I felt the XR pictures almost made me unrecognizable in certain situations. The secondary telephoto lens on the XS really did wonders in creating a more true-to-life portrait picture, and the XR, having to rely on the software, produced an image that often felt pretty distorted. This year, Apple took a very similar approach again with the new iPhone 11, the cheaper, colorful replacement to the XR, and the iPhone 11 Pro, which is the upgrade to the XS. While both of these phones received major camera hardware and software updates, and they both got an additional wide-angle lens, the cheaper iPhone 11 once again lacks that telephoto lens, while the 11 Pro has it. And naturally, my immediate question was whether or not Apple improved the portrait picture software that produces the images for the iPhone 11, and if I'd end up looking sort of not like myself with the end result again. And that's what we're going to talk about in this video. I'm also going to show some side-by-side samples of all of the other picture and video modes too, so you can see for yourself if there's any difference at all between these phones when taking regular old pictures too. So first things first, let's talk about the hardware here, and I'll explain what you get with each phone. Now around back, both of these phones have the exact same 12 megapixel f1.8 aperture 26mm main camera lens with all the same features, including dual pixel phase detection autofocus and optical image stabilization. And what all that means is that if you pull either of these phones out of your pocket and just snap a simple picture of the same subject in the same setting, you're going to be getting the exact same result. And through hundreds of pictures over the last few weeks now, that's exactly what I saw. Shooting regular pictures from the camera app produced the exact same image on both phones when the main lens was used, and that's what you should expect. Inside the camera app, you'll also find the exact same shooting modes, settings, controls, and features as well. Both phones offer the same night mode that also produces the same result. I saw some people suggesting, for whatever reason, that the telephoto lens somehow improves night mode on the 11 Pro, but I just was never able to see any sort of a difference. You can shoot panoramas, of course, and time lapses, and you can edit photos all the same way on both phones too. For regular picture taking, you're getting the same stuff, whether you spend $600 on the iPhone 11 or $1,000 or more on the 11 Pro. And honestly, that's probably enough for most people. For video, once again, if you're just shooting regular old video, you're going to be seeing the same result too. Both phones can shoot 4K at 60 FPS and super slow-mo videos at 1080p 240 FPS too. Like I said, if you just pull your phone out of your pocket and take a standard video or a slow motion video, it doesn't matter what device you have, either the 11 or the 11 Pro, the results will be exactly the same. Now, in regards to the new secondary lens that you'll find on these devices, that's a 12 megapixel f2.4 aperture 13mm ultra wide shooter. And once again, that's the same hardware paired with the same software features across both phones. And I think you'll see the results here are exactly the same, which is to be expected. So hopefully you're still with me so far. The main camera lens and the ultra-wide camera lens on the iPhone 11 and the iPhone 11 Pro are the same hardware that are paired with the same software and features no matter what pictures or videos you take. The results will be exactly the same. This brings us to that third lens that's found only on the iPhone 11 Pro. It's a 12 megapixel f2.0 aperture telephoto lens. This is a zoom lens that not only allows for a clearer shot when zooming in from a distance, but it's also the secondary hardware lens that comes into play when taking portrait mode pictures. First off, let's talk about that zoom. In the camera app on the iPhone 11, you'll see one small button that says 1x. Tapping on it once will bring you out to the wide angle lens, and tapping it again brings you back to the standard lens. The cheaper iPhone 11 does have a zoom feature, of course. and you can zoom in pictures and video by simply pinching or dragging your fingers on the screen. The iPhone 11 offers up to 5 times digital zoom, so the software on the phone is doing all the work. And honestly, the results here aren't terrible. You can certainly see things you wouldn't normally see when you zoom in, and I think that's what most people sort of want. But because you're just relying on the software to do the zooming rather than a special dedicated lens, you're going to lose a little detail, you're going to get a bit of noise, and overall, the picture isn't going to look as sharp. On the iPhone 11 Pro, with its dedicated third telephoto lens, you're going to get 2 times optical zoom, which means the lens itself, the hardware, is doing all the work. You'll see that set of buttons in-app there on the bottom. The 0.5x is the wide angle, 1 is the standard shooting mode, and 2 is the 2 times optical zoom. So right off the bat, your 2x optical zoom using the dedicated lens on the iPhone 11 Pro should look more crisp and clear with more detail versus the 2 times digital zoom on the iPhone 11. Furthermore, the iPhone 11 Pro actually offers an even higher zoom, up to 10 times digital zoom, since it has that telephoto lens to help things out. So if you're really trying to be creepy, you can get significantly closer to objects in the distance with the iPhone 11 Pro. And surprisingly, even at 10x digital zoom, the results here are still pretty good. Now, like I explained earlier, the telephoto lens also assists with portrait mode pictures, those fancy looking pictures with a blurred background and shallow depth of field that imitate the look of DSLR cameras. With the secondary telephoto lens, the iPhone 11 Pro has some extra hardware assistance to help get the shot right, while the iPhone 11 is still once again mainly relying on software to blur the background, focus on the subject, and get the edges and details correct. Right away, what you'll notice when attempting to take portrait pictures with each of these phones is that the actual framing of the shot itself is very different. Each phone requires you to stand at a different distance from the subject you'll be shooting, and from the same distance, the iPhone 11 Pro really brings that subject closer to you, while you actually have to be physically closer to your subject to get a similar shot with the iPhone 11. In some instances, this is helpful. You don't have to get as close to things with the 11 Pro, but actually it also means that if you want to take portrait selfies with the rear camera for whatever reason, you can do so much easier on the cheaper iPhone 11 since things aren't nearly as zoomed in. I realize though that not that many people would ever do that. You can just take portrait selfies using the front camera since that's all the same hardware too across the phones, but I just figured I might as well mention that. You'll also see in these pictures that the background of the shots look completely different. If you attempt to shoot your subject and frame the shot in a similar way on both phones, you'll end up seeing a wider, broader view of the background on the iPhone 11 versus the iPhone 11 Pro. This doesn't necessarily affect the shot per se, but assuming you have something in the background you want to catch, like some colors or lights or something that frames the subject really well, it might be more difficult to get the whole scene around your subject with the iPhone 11 Pro. Now, fortunately, in regards to the actual subject of the picture, this time around, with the cheaper iPhone 11 relying on software, I didn't find any sort of distorting or odd result with the portrait picture. Here's what we saw last year, with the XS looking more true to life, and the XR making things look really strange. And here's what we get this year. Like I said, while the framing and background of the shots are different, the cheaper iPhone 11 does a nearly perfect job making things look right, and I'm really happy with the result. And oh, by the way, last year's portrait mode limitations on the XR are now gone with the iPhone 11 also. With the XR, Apple stupidly didn't allow you to take portrait mode pictures of objects or animals or anything other than human faces. This time, you can take portrait pics of whatever you want, which is great. And once again, the results look solid. You'll see that same difference in the background, and you'll have to adjust where you stand and how you frame the shot, but the iPhone 11, at least having that capability, brings these phones even closer when comparing them. One last thing to note, if you ever have the chance to hold these devices side by side, you will absolutely see a difference when looking at pictures or videos or literally anything else. And that's because the iPhone 11 has that lower resolution LCD screen, while the iPhone 11 Pro has a much brighter, much higher resolution OLED display. Everything is going to look different and probably far better on the OLED iPhone 11 Pro, even YouTube videos or websites or ebooks. But that's just how the content is being shown to you and the difference in the actual display technology. When you take pictures or videos off these phones and put them on your computer to edit them, the images will all look the same. So there you go. If you were deciding between the iPhone 11 and iPhone 11 Pro and wanted to know more about those fancy new cameras, I think I covered it all. Like I mentioned, with the limitations on last year's XR camera, I thought that the differences between that phone and the XS made the XS more attractive and probably swayed some people in that direction. This year, honestly, there's not a whole lot that separates these two devices when it comes to the cameras, and that makes the iPhone 11 probably an even better deal for a lot of people interested in picking up a new phone. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think of the images here with these devices. And if I missed anything important, be sure to let me know in the comments down below. Also, be sure to follow Tech Daily on Twitter and subscribe to the Tech Daily YouTube channel if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys later.